G'day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Golfing Greenkeeper podcast. My name is Steve Smith and I'm your host. It's fantastic to be introducing you to a brand new segment of McMahon's A Design Brief. And to help me do so, I've got joining me on the line Bruno Kay from McMahon's. G'day, Bruno. How are you, mate?
Yeah, good, Steve. How are you?
Mate, I'm very well. Now, you have been busy, your team have been busy, and you've been smashing out a fair bit of this new work that's going on. I'm going to give everyone an update first. Newcastle Golf Club, north of Sydney, mate. How's it all going up there?
Yeah, really good, Steve. We're over halfway through the project, so scheduled to finish July next year.
Wow.
So yeah, going really well though. Currently today there's a heap of turf going down on the new second tees, the new 6 green surrounds, and the new 11th fairway bunkers, which people would have seen some posts online about. So that's all going to be.
That's the old
fourth, isn't it? Today and tomorrow. Yeah, correct. The old fourth.
Yeah,
those fairway bunkers have come up a treat. And
haven't they? They look unreal.
That golf hole now, from the green's elevated,
yes.
Which sort of is great because it's a pretty flat hole.
Yep.
But now with the bunkering complete, and obviously the green and the bunkers around the green as well complete, cracking golf hole and
sensational.
Sort of one of my favourite looking holes now.
Mate, it looks brilliant. I'll be able to share some more of that stuff too as we get some on the social media, so everyone can stay up to date with some of the images. And we've been chatting about me getting up there to do some more visuals about some of the work that's been finished, mate. So it's great to see it's going really well and still going gangbusters. And like you mentioned, due to be completed next year. And this one's been done with Harrison Golf as the architects on course that you're working with, which is fantastic. So great to hear that bit of news, mate. And mate, you can share with us now. You've got a new project up in Queensland. Tell us what's going on and where you're at.
Yeah, mate. So we got invited to tender on a project earlier this year up in Ingham, far north Queensland, about an hour and a half north of Townsville.
Wow.
Just a little volunteer-run golf club that majority of the golf course actually sits inside the racetrack.
Okay.
Basically, obviously won the tender, and it was to build 9 new USGA spec greens.
Wow, fantastic.
So they got funding from the government for the works. So basically, obviously ripping up the old greens on 9 of their holes and replacing them. Moving stuff around a bit and just pretty much whole new greens complexes. So the boys have been up there for about 6 weeks now.
Sensational.
So we've just been hooking in and getting bulk done and green bases and drainage. I think I'm due to go back there Tuesday next week to do help the boys out with finishing 5 of the greens and surrounds ready for grassing.
Wow, that's exciting.
And then, so we're rolling it out pretty quick. It's a good project. One of those jobs where like volunteer run club, and the guys that look after it, like they love it and they're passionate and they come out like they all have full-time jobs obviously, but come 4:30, 5 o'clock you're there and you start seeing these vehicles come in, and it's all the guys who basically look after and run the golf club.
They
all come out and see what's going on and have a chin wag, and they're all pumped with what's happening. And it's really good. And Tim Hoskinson from far north Queensland turf specialist, he's the project manager for the job and has helped the golf club through the whole process of getting funding and specifications together and whatnot. So he's doing a great job, and it's great to work with Tim. Bit of a plug for Tim there, but great little project. Rolling it out in 10 to 12 weeks, and it's going to come up really good. And again, it's like a small country volunteer run golf club. We treat it as if it was like we treat it no different to what we're doing at Newcastle.
As good as any project you do, and you know what? I think I can hear in what you're saying there as well. You get there's a great feel of return, not just in completing the job, but when you do it with these community courses that are volunteer run, it means so much more when they are not taking away from any projects, but they don't often get the opportunity to see these upgrades throughout the life of a golf course. and some of them are 70 plus years old, and they probably haven't been able to do much work at all, really. So to get something done on this scale really does a great deal benefit to the whole community more broadly, and the fact that they're going to get USGA spec greens, top shelf stuff. You guys are in there, professional team, doing it all and doing the work so well. So, mate, it's great to hear that sort of a level of project being completed for a place like Ingham too. So, mate, congratulations and well done on being involved there. I look forward to sharing again some images I've got to get from you guys to share it through the social media as well, so people can see the scale of what's going on, which is fantastic.
Yeah, well, I'll be sure to get a heap of photos next week and flick through to you.
Yeah, brilliant stuff.
And then, I guess another part that we love about projects like that is, we actually, one of the members works for an earth moving company, and we engage that earth moving company just to help us out with some bulk earthworks, and so we got the buy-in from those guys, and then we'll be forever sort of tied to there, and people that if we're ever around, like it'd be somewhere where we'd reach out and go and catch up for a beer and have a look at in years to come. So that's another really good part of it, just that
it is
camaraderie and meeting people who are passionate about their town and their golf club, and having those connections for life, sort of thing.
Absolutely, mate. They're long-term connections, and great to see that you get that engagement and you're able to engage local people involved and get them involved in the project on top of what they're doing. So there's lots of buy-in and there's a sense of ownership as well, and a much more emotional connection to the work that's being done from people who are already involved with the club. They've actually got a deeper involvement again on producing the finishing of new products that are being put in and new parts of the golf course, mate. So that's fantastic to see that McMahons are able to do as well in some of the projects that you get involved with, like this at Ingham. So well done, mate. Yeah. Now, mate, I want you to help me introduce this one. We've got Neil Crafter coming on for this next interview that I've recorded with him. Mate, you've done some work. We talk about the work that you've done with him at Chatswood, and we've talked about it in the past, mate. This is a good one. I know that you'll be able to enjoy listening to, and there might be even some things that you might not have heard of yet from Neil.
Neil's a great guy. I consider him a friend, a mate. He's been around a long time, and we've thoroughly enjoyed working with Neil through the early days of that project, the planning and whatnot, right through to completion. So Neil's been around a long time. He's done a lot of stuff, and it'll be a good listen. So lock in and enjoy, everybody.
Now, one final note before you listen, ladies and gentlemen. I got my microphones not quite 100% when we started the recording, Neil and I. So at about 1 minute and 47 seconds is when I flicked the mic over to everything being a little bit more perfect of what you're used to in terms of the audio. So I do apologise for the first minute and a half or so, but you'll hear the microphone change on my end and get up a lot cleaner at about 1 minute 47. So just thought I'd let you know about that one before we get going. This is episode number 205. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an absolute privilege to be doing another segment of the Design Brief for you, and I've got a wonderful guest joining us here. I'm not going to waste any time. He's from a design firm, Crafter Mogford, and it is the one and only Neil Crafter. G'day, Neil. How are you?
Good, Steve. Nice to be with you.
Mate, thank you for joining in on the podcast. Have you done you've done podcasts before, have you? Got to ask.
Yeah, I've done a few podcasts, Firm and Fast, I think.
Yes.
Was one that I've done. It's not necessarily the easiest thing talking about yourself. I'm not really the greatest self-promoter, so hopefully I've got a few interesting things for your listeners to ponder. But yeah, looking forward to having a chat.
Mate, I'm excited by it, and it's one of those things that, I think that's an Aussieism. We don't often talk ourselves up enough individually, do we? I think that is very much an Aussie thing.
Yeah, look, I think so. I think it's kind of in our nature to be a bit self-effacing and let others say nice things about us, but occasionally you've got to promote yourself, and I think that's probably the hardest thing as a golf course architect with that sort of mindset. You do have to sell yourselves to committees and clients, etc. And so you've got to at least be able to make a decent fist of presenting yourself and your capabilities.
For sure, mate. And look, I'm interested. We're going to talk a little bit about your career. We're going to learn some things, and we're going to talk a little bit, obviously, about architecture, and we'll go down some interesting rabbit holes as well, mate. But I do start off with a little bit of lighthearted fun to get the juices flowing, and that is the Design Brief 5. Now, mate, I do have these blind from you, but if you have listened to other episodes, some people have heard some of these before. But we'll start off with number 1. You ready to go?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's do it. Which do you find more challenging to work on, a new design from scratch or a remodel of a golf course that's existing?
Nice question. Look, I think my answer would be remodeling an existing golf course, because usually you've got a lot more constraints in front of you in terms of the character of the golf course, the particular requirements that the club might be putting upon you in terms of the brief, and designing a golf course from scratch, I think is you generally have a little bit more flexibility. Often the client isn't really that sophisticated in terms of their design understandings, and lets you kind of dictate to them a little bit more about what the golf course could be and feel like and look like. So I think the existing course one is for me the hardest, but as it turns out, that's most of my work anyway. So.
See, you're getting very good at it if you aren't already, mate, which is good to see. Now, number 2. And I do like to hear this, and it's always a little bit interesting. A par 3 hole to finish a round of golf or not on an 18-hole course?
Look, there are examples of some pretty good courses finishing with a par 3, as there are courses that start with a par 3. But I think, philosophically, I think you probably would be wanting to finish with a 4 or a 5. So yeah, that would be my preference. But again, if you're working on an existing golf course, take the Lakes, for example, that finishes with a par 3. There's a whole lot of constraints there that probably don't allow you to finish with a par 4 or par 5, given the location of the clubhouse, roads, car parks, etc. So sometimes you've got to work with what you're given.
I'll throw a random one out in that. Do you think sometimes a par 3 to finish is a bit more interesting or exciting to watch as and you're a player as well, so we'll get into that a little bit too. But is it a harder challenge? Like, you're coming down the last, and I've not played highly competitive golf, but a par 3 to finish up, I imagine it's a one hit. It's all on that shot into the green. It's straight up.
Well, it all is on that one shot, but everyone's hitting off from the same point on the hole. So that's, I suppose, the beauty of a par 3, is that you're able to direct the shot very much. If you take that similar sort of par 3 shot and transplant it to the second shot of a par 4, well, there's probably only a few people that are actually hitting from where you might have put a tee if it was a par 3, and otherwise they can be left, right, short, longer, all sorts of things. So they can have a myriad of different shots. So I guess in that sense, you do have the ability to dictate more of a particular shot on a par 3 than perhaps you do on a par on a par 4.
Okay. No, very good. And we touched on, you touched on it just there. My next question is a par 3 to start an 18-hole course or not, because that's very, very uncommon from what I've found, although 2 courses in my neck of the woods, my old course at Katoomba I was super at, and also Oberon out in the central western New South Wales, has a par 3 to start. Highly unusual. Is it something that we avoid as architects? Is it something you try not to do, or it's just you roll with things?
Look, I've never done it in terms of designing a new course to start with a par 3. Probably the most well-known one that springs to mind is Yarra Yarra.
Okay.
For many years, the original designer, Alec Russell, designed a long par 3, a very challenging hole, mind you.
Okay.
Having played some tournaments at Yarra Yarra, Vic Opens, etc., back in the 80s, it's quite a daunting shot to stand up to sort of 190, 200 metre hole as your first hole of the day and try not to make a mess of it.
Easy to do, right? Cold.
It is very easy to do. But interestingly, in the latest revamp of Yarra Yarra, they decided to go away from that as the first hole, so it's not played as the first anymore. So I think that is, certainly you still play the hole, but you don't play it as the first anymore. So, look, I think it's just often one of those quirks of design that you see. And the other one that springs to mind is when you have back-to-back par 3s. And obviously I grew up playing my golf at Kooyonga in Adelaide, and Kooyonga has sort of a medium-length par 3 as its 14th, and then a long par 3 as its 15th, playing at sort of 90 degrees different direction, so you get a different wind effect. And I remember reading the Tom Doak's first edition of his confidential guide, and when it came to the courses in Adelaide and Kooyonga, he criticised the fact that there were 2 consecutive par 3s. Well, some years later, I was invited by Tom to the opening of his Bandon Dunes course, and in the course of which, surprise, surprise, he placed consecutive par 3 holes. So I did point out to him that he thought it was a weakness at Kooyonga, and I think he sort of said, well, touche.
I when I sort of started working out these questions, I find we often, wax lyrical sometimes about short par 4s, which I have done in the past, and we don't seem to talk about par 3s often enough. And I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to ask some weird questions, because they can be a real quirk of a golf course. You use that word quirk, and I'm a massive fan of quirk in design and architecture. It really sometimes can be a standout on a golf course, other times maybe not so. But interesting the way we use par 3s, or we see par 3s used in golf courses. So there you go.
Well, par 3s, especially when you're routing a new course, the par 3s are sometimes seen as sort of connector type holes that you might utilise to get from sort of one part of the landscape terrain to another. But they are a huge part of the identity and makeup of a golf course. And if you've got a good collection of par 3s, then you're well on the way to having a good golf course, I think.
Interestingly, and you mentioned the way that they are used like that, which is something that we do very much see modern times. Interestingly, thinking about Kingston Heath and Dan Suter's design, he started off with the 10th famously in the middle of the paddock and said, "This is where this is where I'm starting from."
Yeah, and you've got to start somewhere. And I'm assuming that he had a clubhouse site given to him by the club, and probably wasn't that hard to figure out where the clubhouse would go, but he saw that avenue of big gum trees and thought, yeah, this is a perfect spot for a par 3. So I'll put one in here and figure out the rest of the course around it.
That's right. And the weird part I find is that it's the hole that no one plays in major tournaments. So there you go.
No, it's a little bizarre, but again, it's an absolute classic of a par 3 hole. And obviously, we're going to mention Dan Suter. Clearly, he was someone who was a little bit ahead of his time, I think, in terms of his design abilities, and they were very well recognised by Dr. MacKenzie when he came to Australia, and certainly in the rebunker or in the bunkering of Kingston Heath, for example, he didn't really have too much to correct and was extremely complimentary about the routing and the shaping of the greens, etc. that Mick Morecambe had done there. So certainly he's one of the unsung heroes, I think, of early Australian golf, Dan Suter.
Yep, he's certainly my biggest sort of interest in golf architecture of Australian history, that's for sure. Mate, we go to number 4, to the most unusual design element that you've seen incorporated into a golf hole or a golf course. Like I said, I like my quirk, so I'm interested in something a little bit left of centre that you might have come across that piques your interest or has piqued your interest in your career.
Yeah, look, I remember seeing a photo of a course in America, and exactly which one it is and where it is, I couldn't tell you, but I do know that there was like an old ruin of a building, and they basically kept it inside and sort of wrapped a bunker around it and kept it within this golf hole. So
wow,
certainly it would be hard enough if you got down into this bunker, let alone up against an old remnant stone wall of a building. So I think that's pretty unusual.
Certainly unique. We'll take that one. Number 5, mate, the final one for the Design Brief 5. Can you name for us one of your favourite golf course designs that you like personally? Might not be one of the major names that we could talk about and consider, but is there one that you've come across in your time, in your travels, your studies, that you go, you know what, I always come back to this and I really like it?
Well, look, I find it, I suppose what I might give you is 2 examples. One, a modern design, and 2, a golden age example.
Okay.
So we start with the modern one. I would suggest it would be Barnbougle by Tom Doak and Mike Clayton.
Yep.
The other associated guys, Schneider, etc., who helped out on the project. But I just love, what I love about the place is that it really doesn't feel constructed to me, and the fact that the course is turfed in fescue and that there's really no difference between tees, fairways, roughs, or the light roughs anyway, surrounds, putting greens, etc. It's all just a matter of mowing, mowing heights, etc.
Yep.
So there aren't the changes in colour and texture, etc., that you get when you're going from, Bentgrass to Cooch or to Zoysia or whatever. You get colours, textures that are different. The fescue, I just love the look of that, and as a result, it just feels to me like they found the course. Well, when I know that they didn't quite find it like that. Though I did have the benefit of a tour from Greg Ramsey before the course was built, so I was lucky enough to walk the property beforehand. So I do have a bit of an idea of what was there before, but it just looks to me like they went out and said, "Oh, okay, there's a spot we can mow out a green on it," and the greens hence don't sort of really have that built sense to them.
Yep, 100% agree. Yeah.
So that's the modern one, and I find myself coming back to Kingston Heath, and the Heath is one of those courses. If you were asked the question, is there a course that you would be happy if you could only play one course for the rest of your life? Well, Kingston Heath would be it for me.
Yeah, wow.
I've long sort of maintained that, although, it's probably down in the rankings below Royal Melbourne West, etc. But in terms of a golf course that you just love to be forced to only play that one, I'll quite happily take my medicine.
There you go. I think there wouldn't be too many people who'd be disappointed with either of those choices.
No, probably not. Well, we should aim high.
Very, very good answers, mate. Thank you very much for that. And that's the Design Brief, Fast Five. Thank you, mate, for those interesting answers. Now, I'd like to get into a bit of your career so that people can understand. Some people have probably heard of Neil Craft and they don't really know much about your background. But, mate, if you wouldn't mind sort of giving us a bit of an idea of your background. I mentioned there you've come from a bit of the golf side. Some people will know your sister Jane Crafter as well. But if you could take us back to a little bit of how you got into golf, and in particular then what was that transition into golf course architecture? How did that happen? And obviously yourself and Paul Mogford working together to create Craft and Mogford Golf Strategies, mate. Please take us back.
Yeah, well, look, it's a long way back, actually. My first memory of golf is as a 4-year-old.
Okay.
And I'm 69 now, just so we're talking 65 years ago, which is
there you
quite
go.
a long time. But my dad, Brian, was a golf professional. His brother, Murray, was also a golf professional here in Adelaide. So unapologetically, we came from a golfing family. So golf was our sport. And when I was 4, I do remember Dad taking my sister Jane and I out to the North Adelaide Par 3 course.
Oh, wow.
For
Okay.
a hit.
Yep.
And I remember, I think it was maybe the second or the third hole, Dad had a hole in one. So, my
that's
goodness.
ridiculous.
That's what you're supposed to do, I suppose.
This is golf, right? I just hit it.
Yeah,
do I hit it in that hole 120 metres away? Is that what we're going to do?
Well, I don't think it was quite that long, maybe 90 or something like that, because they had quite a few shortish holes on it. But for us, it was probably, 5 hits or something to get 90 metres. So that's my first sort of memory of the game. And, both Jane and I started seriously into golf a lot earlier than she did. Maybe when I was 8 or so, I was playing regularly. Dad was the pro up at Flagstaff Hill.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Golf club. So I'd go up there with him on a Sunday and help him in the pro shop, and usually play 9 holes or something with him later in the afternoon. And then a few years later, Jane got interested and she used to join us for those sort of family hits on a Sunday, and Saturday was involved footy and cricket, Australian rules, and and cricket was the sort of sports. But I got to a stage where golf was more important to me, and I was better at it than I was as a cricketer or a footballer.
Okay.
And then took that, put those other sports aside and played golf more seriously, as did Jane. And, ultimately I got as far as representing Australia 4 times as an amateur.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. There you go.
Played Eisenhower Trophy in 1984. So, yeah, look, I had pretty decent amateur career, but I fortunately had the sense to know that professional golf was not for me.
Okay.
I didn't think that I was really quite at the level of the guys that I played amateur golf with, of the likes of Craig Parry, Brett Ogle, Peter O'Malley, etc., that you could kind of tell that their golf was at a slightly different level to mine. So
I want to ask, mate, if you don't mind, like I hear you say that and you played top level amateur golf, right? And then you're easily talking about how your game wasn't at that next level. There is a real jump. Like I've been fortunate enough to play good club golf, I suppose, and I've won a club championships at my club. But like from doing that, week in, week out, and seeing like guys that were off scratch +1. Like I never got to that low, right? But there was a jump. And then you go from that to the level of regional, pennant golf and that sort of stuff. You go, there's another leap. You're talking the highest level amateur golf, and then there's being another leap forward. Was it that obvious to you that they were that much better than you?
Yes.
That's staggering, I find.
Yes, it was. And there were other people that turned pro, of my sort of peer group of golfers, and you would sort of think to yourself, oh, wow, that's an interesting choice. And, most of them didn't succeed. Maybe there might have been one or two of that group who had a reasonable career as a professional. But, yeah, no, I could tell just from playing with them and seeing how they hit the ball and
that's
compared
unreal.
to how I did. And, yeah, that was pretty obvious to me
There you
that
go.
they were going to be successful. But
There you go.
Coming back onto the topic, I guess our dad wanted both Jane and I to have some sort of a career behind us if we were to take our golf further. And Jane got a pharmacy degree, and I was always interested in drawing, and so I studied architecture at Adelaide University and eventually got my degree. And I really never had the desire to turn professional, and so I stayed working as an architect.
Okay.
At this time, Dad was, Dad as a local club professional was really a jack of all trades, if you like, repairing clubs, selling equipment in the shop, teaching. Dad was a very good teacher. He was the only coach that either Jane or I had during our careers. And he also did part-time golf course design. So
Oh, wow.
I kind of grew up with Dad drawing green plans and plans for courses on the dining room table after dinner, that sort of thing. And so I always had an interest in it. And so once I was able to understand the design process through the training as an architect, I kind of had in the back of my mind that I wanted to be able to transition out of building architecture into golf course architecture, and
Wow.
was able to work with Dad while he was still alive. He passed away in 1994. But, yeah, my sort of design career, I guess, had involved him. And then once he passed, well, then I was on my own, so to speak.
There you go. Far out. So can I ask some of the places that you remember your father was doing work on and you were helping him with?
Oh, look, we've pretty much all in South Australia, apart from one course that we did in Perth.
Okay.
And, a lot of country golf courses.
Yep.
I think the South Australian Golf Association had a bit of a scheme whereby they would help subsidise the cost of a golf architect, in this case Dad, because he was really, between he and his brother Murray, who was doing a bit as well, they were the only ones in South Australia who were doing any golf course design. And so the country golf clubs could get a little bit of a subsidy for Dad's fee.
Wow.
So, yeah, I went along with him to a lot of trips out into the country to look at golf courses. Roxby Downs was one of the
Oh,
places that we
that's out.
travelled
That's
to
out in the
together.
middle,
Yes, that's way out
middle
in
of nowhere up north.
mining town.
Yeah.
Established by BHP out in the north of South Australia. So yeah, I saw quite a bit of the state.
Wow.
Travelling with Dad out to the country, and look, it was a good a good training for me, and it helped me, I think, to understand, all sorts of clients. I guess, when golf clubs, especially in the country, and you know yourself how a lot of these clubs are pretty much reliant on volunteers.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
If they've got one greenkeeper, they're lucky.
They're doing well, right? They're doing well.
And so that sort of enabled me to get I guess a bit of a range. But we were also doing work at Kooyonga and Glenelg and Royal Adelaide and other courses around the city. So I was kind of exposed to the full range of golf clubs.
Yeah, no. There you go, mate. Great experience into it early on. So what point, so you mentioned your father passed away, and then it's essentially yourself taking up that lead role, I gather, in the design space from the business. At what point I'm curious, how do you step forward from there to get to Paul Mogford and yourself joining together? How and where does that happen?
Well, Paul was first introduced to the Society of Australian Golf Course Architects and their members as a young researcher. He was paid by the society to do quite a deal of environmental research we're talking sort of mid 1990s.
Okay.
Just when the first I guess considerations of golf and the environment began, and so the society was quite at the forefront of that, and we put out a brochure called the benefits of golf, and Paul was very much a big part of making that brochure happen. Did a lot of really good research on what was happening around the world, and the internet wasn't quite as big a thing back then. So,
the old listening to dial tones on modems, mate.
Yeah. I can hear them now.
It's something we don't all miss.
No, definitely. So Paul, I think, was I think he might have just qualified as a landscape architect at that point, and I was getting a bit busy with some projects in Asia, and I needed someone to help me. And Paul came over from Melbourne to live here in Adelaide for probably worked for us for maybe 2 or 3 years, and unfortunately I had to let him go because the Asian economic crisis hit, and all of my Asian projects stopped, and so Paul went back to Melbourne and worked as a landscape architect for a few years. But we always kept in touch, and eventually it sort of got to the point where I thought it would be good to have Paul, firstly as a member of the Society of Golf Course Architects, but also as a partner. So we set up Crafter and Mogford, and that's
there you go. That was how it all began. So when did that happen? Because you're talking about the Asian downturn. That was early 2000s. Is that sort of when we're talking-ish?
No, it was about 97.
Oh, this is late 90s. Okay, righto.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Paul went back, and it was sort of early 2000s when we got together. So it's a bit over 20.
Yeah. Wow.
22, 23.
Fantastic long career working
23 years,
together as Craft and Mogford Golf Strategies, which is fantastic. You were a founding member of the Society of Australian Golf Course Architects too, is that right?
I've got that on my resume.
I've been talking to Ted Sterling as well, and he sent me some photos a while ago, and it's young. Everyone's young.
Everyone is young. Yes, actually, I didn't attend the last meeting, and I saw some photos that were sent through, and I thought, oh my goodness, everyone's so old. And I look in the mirror and go, well, so mate.
There you go.
But yes, guys like Michael Woolridge, Ross Watson, Ted Sterling, as you mentioned, Teddy Parslow.
Yes.
So yeah, we had, and then a few years later we had guys like Bob Shearer and Ian Stanley as members, which came through the Thompson Woolridge Parrott organisation. So yeah, we had we had a real range. We had a good golf team at one stage there with when Clayton was a member, and we had Stanley and Shearer, and then a few of us amateurs. Justin Trott always was a good player, and myself. So yeah, we would have probably fancied ourselves against most opposition, to be fair.
No, fair enough. It's certainly, absolutely some good quality names in that group from a golf perspective for sure. Mate, so that gives us a bit of an idea and a bit of your background to this point. I'm curious now if you wouldn't mind sharing with us maybe some of the work that you've been doing lately, and we'll touch on one very soon that's close to me here in Sydney. But what's some of the projects you're working on at the moment?
Well, look, I suppose as we speak, I'm thankfully, well, I should perhaps not say thankfully, but I'm not super busy at the moment, but I have been over the last sort of, 4 or 5 years, really since COVID. I mean, if we'll go back to a little bit of history, COVID, when the whole COVID thing first hit, I thought, oh my God, my business is going to be destroyed. Golf and golf clubs will collapse.
Yeah.
And, you think the worst. And one client decided, which was the Mount Osmond Golf Club, they decided that some work that we had previously done, some planning work, that they would take the opportunity of being, given that the course was closed, that they'd take the opportunity. And that really was my sort of first COVID project, and thanks to them.
And that's down in South Australia, isn't it? Not far from Adelaide.
Just up in the hills, just outside of Adelaide. So they kind of kept me going for a little bit, and then gradually other projects kind of manifest themselves, and as it turned out, COVID was very good for the game of golf, and gradually my business just kept getting busier and busier, and obviously ball as well, and then you look sort of those 5 or 6 years on, and I've had the busiest period I've ever had in my career. So unfortunately, other people's businesses, if you're in the hospitality industry or things like that, it was the opposite was the case. But from a golf perspective, it made a huge difference. But I suppose we've just finished a fairly comprehensive redevelopment of Glenelg Golf Club here in Adelaide, which was partly driven by the need to replace the irrigation system.
Okay.
Had quite an old hydraulic type system that was. Mate,
I'm hurting hearing that word.
Yes, there was a very strange way of controlling sprinklers having all of these tubes with water in
It's
them.
kind of funny because it was before my time that it was essentially coming out into the industry. But from what I gather, when it came out, it was a bit of a thing, a bit of an interesting new fandangled, if you like, way of controlling irrigation that was meant to set the world alight. It was it changed the game apparently. But then I look at it now in my time and I just go, what were they thinking?
Yes, well, it is a little bit like that. And, it was certainly interesting doing, because we'd worked there sort of, Dad and I had worked at Glenelg since 1980. So
Right.
we've had a long involvement at Glenelg. Thankfully, they're still putting up with me. So thanks to the club. But, yeah, the irrigation system was very difficult to work around, and if you dug into the ground in the wrong spot, you would break all of the tubes, and then all the sprinklers in the immediate area would pop up and
have water coming out from everywhere.
You knew that you'd hit a hotline. So yeah, that was a big driver for the latest redevelopment. We took the opportunity to kind of reimagine the golf course while still trying to keep sort of the essence, I suppose, of what the previous redevelopment had done. But we had a focus of doing more with less bunkers, less revetting in the bunkers, etc. And we cut the bunker numbers down from over 100 to about 60.
Wow!
So quite a reduction, and it's proven popular. Recently hosted the Interstate Teams series, and so that's been a big, and obviously there's a big family connection for me at Glenelg. My Uncle Murray was the pro there for many years. My mum, before she married my father, was the office secretary. So she worked at the club, met Dad, and then obviously Jane and I came along. So, yeah, there's a real family connection there for me at Glenelg, and, I love her.
That's unreal, mate. And look, you know what? I'll speak for it from my perspective. I'm a massive fan of the work that's been done there that you've been behind, the design work of at Glenelg. It's I'd never seen it before apart from photos, but then getting the opportunity to go down and see it with Tim Warren, the superintendent there, and then next time I was down, I caught up with Ryan van der Veen, who'd been working on that project with you. And I am an unashamed fan of what's been done. I think it's absolutely outstanding, and I'm looking forward to the day I get the opportunity to get down there for a game of golf, because it really stands out, and it's kind of like, I see Royal Adelaide, which, again, I'm a fan of all the stuff in Adelaide. It's huge. But it's Glenelg has been done in a way that kind of keeps it unique. It's in the way that I look at it. Like, I've always looked at it, and you've got Royal Adelaide, you've got Kooyonga, you've got Grange. They're all the other ones are the big four that I call them. But Glenelg, the way that you've done it, it's not something that even doesn't feel like it's one of the cut from the same cloth from a design perspective, is probably what I'm trying to say. And because of that, I think it stands out incredibly well, but it's almost like its own shining light. It rolls to the beat of its own drum in a way. And I think it's really captivating to go there and see that. I find it fascinating. Was that ever the intention? I don't know.
Well, look, you quite rightly mentioned Ryan van der Veen, and I was about to mention Ryan, because obviously he was a big part of the redevelopment, both from a design contribution perspective as well as construction, because Ryan did all of the shaping, construction supervision, etc. And obviously Tim Warren, as the superintendent, had a huge role. Also Bob Toohey, who former top class South Australian professional tournament promoter.
Okay.
who was involved with us in the first redevelopment of the course, sort of from 98 to 2004. Bob, who's now 85, volunteered his services. So Bob was there with us, contributing his ideas and thoughts. Fortunately, the three of us got on pretty well together and were quite like-minded, so we didn't have any fracas or LAs or anything like that about design. But yeah, look, I think your observation is a good one, and we kind of wanted Glenelg to still have that unique character that it had from the first redevelopment. It's the only course in Adelaide with revetted bunkers, and I think because of that, it has a unique feel and look to it. But also there's some other aspects of the property that are quite unique, and what we've come up with now, like you said, I don't think anyone's going to try and copy, and it distinguishes itself from the. I'm not going to call the Kuyongas and the Royal Adelaide's run of the mill courses, but that they don't have that level of quirk. We come back onto the quirk factor.
Mate, it's just outstanding. It really is outstanding.
We've got quite a bit of, certainly the quirk was conscious.
Yep. Okay.
They were decisions that we made. They didn't just sort of accidentally happen, but we wanted some quirky design elements in there that would get people talking.
It certainly does that, and one of the things that I want to. There's two parts to it actually, and I've had spoken with Ryan van der Veen about some of these things even while he was doing them. He's down there on course, but if you wouldn't mind, maybe I suppose expanding on a couple of these points. One of them is the use of the timber around in not just around the bunkers, and that probably blends into the other part, the hybrid bunkers as Ryan calls them. But it's the timber in the bunkers in some part, but also along some of the steeper banks and things like around, is it the 9th green? Did I get it correctly there? Near the water, on the right side near the water, but then on the left side, which is away from water. And just the way that some of the photos I've seen from the course staff, I mean, it's I've never seen anything done in that way in this country. I've seen sleepers used, but not in that way, with grass down the middle. It's very interesting, unique, and it's a wonderful little detail.
Yeah, well, look, I guess, a lot of these things are not necessarily new ideas. The use of sleepers to shore up bunkers or sides of tees or something that dates back to the almost prehistory of golf and golf courses, especially in Scotland and the British Isles. You see a lot of use of it, and I suppose Pete Dye was probably the man responsible for bringing that look into American golf from some of his trips to Scotland, etc., over the years. As it happened for a number of years, Ryan actually worked for Pete Dye. Mm-hmm. So Ryan's kind of got that aesthetic in his design kit bag, if you like. And we were talking about in particular how we could do something unique at the 9th green, because we were expanding the lake. We were moving the green across so that it would border the lake.
Yep.
What were we going to do with the bank? There's a lot of different edge treatments you can use. You can turf it. You could do a rock wall. You could use sleepers, and so we kind of thought, oh, okay, we could use sleepers, but probably you're sort of used to seeing, from the TPC course in Florida, the bulkhead type sleepers, which are a solid wall, and we then talked about some of the examples that Pete Dyer's used, and that was more to lay down the sleepers into the face of a bank rather than having them retaining. They're more, I guess, partly decorative, partly functional, but with the sleepers spaced apart, turf in between, and create quite a unique look and feel. And in the case of the ninth green, Glenelg has an interesting situation in that the clubhouse is in the middle of the property.
Mm-hmm.
So you come in through the boundary gates and you've got a long entry drive to actually get to the car park. And so you see the golf course unfolding. And that's one thing that I really like about the feel and character of Glenelg is you've got that sense of arrival. I'm here in the golf course. I'm being given some glimpses of what I'm going to see and face rather than driving straight in off the boundary and into a car park.
It's it's that's an interesting thing that happens at two golf courses that I know of in Adelaide, both Royal and Glenelg, is that the clubhouse is in the middle of the site, and that's a great way to experience or a lot of the elements of the course before you even go to play golf, right?
Yeah. I love that idea, and so we knew that the ninth green was highly visible from that entry drive, and so we wanted something that would stand out, be unique, but still be functional in terms of how it worked as an edge treatment. And we ran that idea past the committee, and fortunately they liked it. So did that, and then this was sort of probably a bit over halfway through the redevelopment. So we were then thinking, okay, well, how do we introduce the timber into other? We had actually done a little bit of a similar thing at the side of the 13th tee with sleepers. So we had some sleeper in sort of out of play areas, but these were sort of the first in play ones, and so we rolled it out a different timber but still railway sleeper treatment in a couple of bunkers as well. So there's a bit of a range of the use of timber without sort of overdoing it. You're mindful that you don't want to every hole to...
It's not everywhere. Yeah. And you mentioned the revetted bunkers that had been a big part of Glenelg from my old memory of looking at photos. You've kept that in different form, I suppose, moving forward now in Glenelg. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, the golf club gave us a brief to reduce the metre length of revetting around the golf course, because it was becoming quite difficult from a maintenance perspective to have to keep replacing the revetting. So Tim Warren began investigating some artificial turf options. Now, we're I guess most people in construction and golf design are familiar with the eco bunker type construction, which utilises, I think, second-hand artificial turf that they harvest from various locations who are pulling up turf, and they use that for their, for their revetting. Well, we wanted something that was a little bit thicker in terms of the sod height.
Okay.
And so we wanted something that more reflected the look of natural sand. When I say natural turf sods that we'd used in the first redevelopment.
Which are, an inch thick sometimes or whatever it might be. Yep.
Yeah. So we trialled some different profiles, and eventually we settled on for one new type of artificial turf, which we imported and utilised for all of the revetting in the bunkers. And this hopefully will see us all out in terms of not having to be replaced. Some of the early bunkers that we did with this have probably been in the ground now for maybe 5 years at
Yeah, okay.
least. And,
Yeah, wow.
showing no signs of any sort of wear or distress. But also we wanted to look at how we did some of the fairway bunkers rather than, in the previous iteration we may have done sort of 3 pop bunkers in a sort of a chain, if you like, all fully revetted. So the amount of revetting that they took was quite high. So to take that example, well, we kind of would blow that up into what we then called a hybrid bunker that had areas of revetting, particularly on the faces where shots would play out over them, but on the sides where, shots wouldn't need to be hit out of, they might have a more natural sort of fescue native grass kind of transition down into the sand. So we were able to reduce the lineal metres of revetting quite considerably and create these interesting sort of hybrid look bunkers as we called them, and some of them we threw in some railway sleepers into as well to give that sort of combination, sort of rugged type Scottish look, and it seems to have worked pretty well.
I think you've almost created a Glenelg design element there. It's unique, well, look, and it's fascinating.
Look, I think in reality, all these things, all of these design elements have really been used before, and it's about kind of bringing them together if it suits the, there's properties that I think wouldn't be suitable to do that on, and sure, possibly Kuyongo, which is sort of a bit more treed and perhaps not as, doesn't have quite as much sort of open feel as Glenelg does. It mightn't be suited to that. So,
yep,
every course has got to have its own feel and character to it.
No, indeed. How did you guys find as a group, as a trio, if you like, of architects, of minds, doing this redesign or reimagining in a way of Glenelg? Because it's not the longest course going around. I think most people know that. It's a little bit more shorter than a traditional size, mega championship golf course. But it's got some really great questions about the holes. When you stand on, and I'm a huge fan of 12, with the par 5, and then where you get to your second shot up towards the green, it's a very, very unique green. And again, in itself is a great design from where I sit. But there's different challenges and different questions around. Did you have, I'm going to use the word fun, did you have fun trying to work out how to ask good questions from the different tees and from the different shots and approaches for players?
Yeah, look, I think you've got to take that that approach. Yes, it was it was fun, and I think we all had various ideas along the way for different areas of the golf course, and that if whoever had the idea, it didn't really matter who it was. I always say that a good idea is a good idea. It doesn't matter who brings it up, whether it's someone from the committee or whether it's a member. But a bad idea is still a bad idea, regardless of who it comes from. So being able to recognise, I suppose, what is a good idea and what isn't is obviously a big part of sort of the, I guess, the editing process that goes into a design. So yeah, we had a lot of fun in that respect, and we had some challenges in terms of what we wanted to do in particular areas. Like, for example, we knew that we always wanted to move the 6 tees further around to reduce the angle of the dogleg on that long par 4, but to do that we needed to shorten the par 5 fifth, move the green back, and so we've actually been able to do it in a way that's created quite a challenging and difficult par 5 green, that I think the whole average for golfers is at least the same, if not slightly higher than the hole that was 30 metres longer.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Wow.
length is not, necessarily the be all and end all. And, yes, more players can reach the green in 2, but to get on the green in 2, you've got to have thought out your shots very well. And, there's a price to pay for attempting something that doesn't come off. And so, eventually you'll learn how to maneuver the golf ball around the golf course, because obviously there's a lot less bunkers than there were before, and what we've tried to do is to make them pay for themselves, if you like. The bunker has to really do something and influence the golfer further back up the hole as to what sort of shot they play and how they place their tee shots in particular.
Yep, working your way around the golf course, and no doubt, like most courses, pardon me, you've got to sometimes play it once or twice to get a bit of a feel of, I won't do that again.
No, exactly. And and while we're sort of trying to generally allow people to understand the golf hole on the first time round, this is unashamedly a members' golf course, and so they know the problems that are there. And in a couple of places we've got bunkers over the back of greens that aren't visible, not on many holes.
Yep.
It's probably only 2 of them like that. But once you know that bunker's there, though, it certainly has an effect when you're playing your approach shot into the green.
Yep, the invisible mind games. No doubt. No doubt. Now, mate, talking about the length and challenge of a golf course in its design, I want to move to Sydney, and I want to talk about Chatswood Golf Club, New Greens Chatswood here, that has recently opened. It's certainly your handiwork on this one. It's Australia's first design. I'll be believed to be proven otherwise, but as far as I'm aware, it's Australia's first specifically designed 12-hole golf course. So I'd like you to tell us a little bit about this project. And you work with a podcast partner that I've got involved in the design brief, McMahon, so I'll talk about that as well. But tell us a little bit about the background to this. It was an 18-hole course. It was very tight, and how it come to be an interesting and fun 12-hole golf course that's now open for play.
Yeah, well, Chatswood, as a golf course, was really struggling. They're a very small 18-hole course, but the 18 holes were not really sustainable because there were 4 holes that crossed other holes. So I think in this day and age of litigation, you really got to be looking at improving the safety of courses and golfers and not have crossing holes. It was really jammed, I think, is probably the best word to describe it. It was jam-packed onto the property. The golf club themselves owned effectively 13 and a half holes, and the other 4.5 were on leased land from, or Crown land, essentially. Yep. So they had lack of tenure or security of tenure on those holes. So one of the things that we stress to them in the first instance is that whatever you do on your land that you own, it's got to kind of be a sustainable course for you going forward. Because if for some reason you're not able to, or the local council says, no, we don't want to lease these holes to you in the future, your 18-hole course then kind of disappears. So we looked at a number of different options with the club, but I think they were quite well satisfied with the possibility of a 12-hole course, and ultimately that worked out to be 9 holes on their own land, with 3 holes on the lease land. So if in the future those 3 holes are lost, then they still have a 9-hole course to fall back on. But a 12-hole, I guess, you're looking at things that are multiples of 3, and obviously 18 holes, 6 times 3, and 9 holes, 3 times 3, and 12, 4 times 3.
Yep.
So, it's something that has been looked at and developed around the world over the last 10, 15 years as to how we could get courses away from that multiple of 9, 9 holes, 18, 27, 36, etc. And, there have been, a reasonable number of 12-hole courses built around the world, just not so much in Australia. And, the opportunity was to do it here. And fortunately, the developers of the retirement community that effectively was going to fund the redevelopment of the golf course were happy with this idea, and the club didn't need to be sold it too much or have it sort of rammed down their throats. They felt that 12 holes was a good model in terms of being able to bring golfers back to this property and to give them an experience that would satisfy them and not feel like they've been shortchanged and, where's the other 6?
Yeah, sure.
And certainly Club Links, the operators, are very much thinking that a round of golf at Chatswood is 12 holes.
Yep.
And, they're not encouraging people to play 9. They're not encouraging people to play the first 12 and play another 6, which can happen because of the way the course has been designed. But yeah, they're really supportive of the whole 12-hole idea, and from time poor golfers, it makes a lot of sense. Your round of golf, takes 2/3 of the time that it would otherwise, and that either enables you to spend more time in the bar, or go home to your family. So yeah, it's so far the response has been really good, and I think everyone's happy with it. One of the big challenges for us, and certainly for McMahon's as the constructor, was that one of the requirements was to use the excess fill material that came from setting the retirement units and clubhouse into an existing escarpment, was to use about 60 or 70,000 cubic metres of rock fill to retain and build up the golf course. So that was really the challenge from our perspective, was to how to do that and to not make it too artificial, I guess.
Well, it's funny you mention that. We're talking about design details around Glenelg. I got a chance to play it. I played it day 2 that it opened, albeit the second hole, which wasn't quite completed yet, waiting for the green to grow in at the time.
It's just opened.
It has now. I feel dirty. I've got to get back out there and have a go.
Yes.
Because that would look like my favourite hole on the golf course, if I'm being honest. It's an incredible looking roller coaster. But you talk about the stone. I remember talking to Bruno, and he was explaining to me that all of the material that was excavated had to stay on site. When you look at the property and you're working your way around the golf course, particularly the first 3 holes, the stone feels it's been utilised really, really well in the detail and the way that you used it, retaining areas, building up tees or whatever it might be. It doesn't feel out of place. In fact, because I come from the Blue Mountains where I did my time, and the mountains is all sandstone escarpment, it actually felt like home to me. And I really enjoyed the feeling of playing in this little valley of golf with this amazing colours. Like I wasn't there in the afternoon, I was there in the morning, but I know what sandstone does when sunlight hits it late in the afternoons and early in the mornings, and it's just a beautiful array of different earthy tones and shadows coming off. But the course flowed with all of those, and there's a lot of elevation changes you had to deal with and incorporate. And tell us a bit about that, because working out how to use that stone well and not make it artificial, you did a very good job with that in its use, and also the way the elevations have all turned out and where the golf course plays.
Look, I think probably the first thing that we wanted to try and do was because of the terrain of the golf course, it's sort of set up into these tiers. The old holes would play along a tier. There'd be quite a steep sandstone escarpment down to the next tier. And it sort of dictated realistically how we were going to lay the golf course out, because you couldn't all of a sudden, play from down here up over 3 tiers to a green miles away, carve out all of that vegetation, et cetera, et cetera. So we were quite limited in terms of how much of the existing vegetation we could remove, and we've certainly been mindful of that. But trying to retain as many, whole corridors as we could was certainly a priority. And I think for people that knew the old Chatswood course well, they would play this new course and go, oh yeah, I recognise this hole, but it's a different hole laid out upon the footprint of the old hole. Certainly there's new holes there that are quite different from what were there before, but most of them have a sense of the old course in regards to how it feels. In regards to the rock, well, we had this requirement, and we thought, okay, well, we don't want to crush all of this rock up and just have to deal with it as fill. So we asked for the builders to try and leave us a reasonable amount of boulders, and obviously from their perspective, the boulders are easier to create because they don't have to put them through the rock crusher. So they just stockpiled a whole lot of boulders for us, and fortunately McMahon's had a really good guy that is well versed in constructing rock walls and rock features, and so he went to work on these stone walls in the locations that we had, and essentially what we sort of tried to do was, where we had a really steep slope to deal with, that we would terrace these walls, have some landscaping in between the rock, the new rock walls that we built, and I'm really pleased with the look of it. And like you said, it reflects that natural sandstone character that there are already rock faces on the golf course that are exposed, but also the sandstone treatment that the buildings are faced in. So yeah, there's a real nice visual character, and like you said, there's interest in terms of early morning, late afternoon shadows, etc., from the walls that probably we wouldn't have had if we'd not used them.
Yep. I want to talk about the second hole, because, like I said, I walked it. So it wasn't open for play, but I had to walk it. I was captivated by it because it's a par 5, the only par 5 on the golf course. You play down to the lowest point, essentially, of the course, or the main paddock, and then it must go up. I'd love to measure it. It must be a 20-metre rise to the green from that lowest point, if not more, and a little chicane. There you go. There's a bunker off the left side it's got a rock face on the outside of it, incorporated into the bunker itself as you get up towards the green. But if I'm not mistaken, was that, I tried to cross-reference this to Google, was that 2 hole corridors blended to make the 1 hole? Is that how it, because it is just an incredible golf hole. I so want to go back there and play it.
Well, the golf club were very specific to us that they wanted to end up with a par 5 of, a reasonable substance, not one of these par 5s that you sort of go, really, that's a par 4.
It's a par 5 on paper. Yeah.
Yeah. Who are you kidding? That's a par 4.
This is I call it a reverse roller coaster because you don't go up and over, you go down and then up to finish. It's sensational.
Yeah, look, it's essentially the second hole with part of the 12th hole tacked on the end of it. And the second hole was a par 5 in the past, but it played to a green where we've sort of expanded the third tees into, and we wanted to take the green further left than that, but we've then put it on and to the left. So it's up on the next tier of, so we've obviously had to transition up some of these slopes, and it was a challenge to do it. And I think if you're walking the golf course, you would definitely want to have a breather on the third tees after having played the second. But if you're whizzing around in a cart, I don't think you'll notice it too much. But yes, it's certainly it's uphill and it's long, but it's as you said, it's sort of the last 50% of the hole, I guess, is uphill, and it's downhill for the first half. So it's also a difficult tee shot. You really have to position your tee shot well because there's a fairway bunker on the left, and beyond that is a pond. So if you overshoot the fairway, you're in the pond. But if you can shape your ball, you can get further up the fairway and possibly have a chance to get close to the green for 2. Although I suspect the average golfer will probably be definitely a 3-shot or even a 4-shot.
It is a genuine long hole. Absolutely.
Yeah, but we've got that said, we've got a number of quite shortish par 4s as well on the course. So it's not a long course by any means, but I think we looked to kind of make, as you used the word before, fun. We want to make this course fun to play and enjoyable, and make you want to any golf course that makes you want to come back and play again. In your case, you want to come and challenge second, and your first effort at it may well not be as successful as you hope, and so you want to come back and try and conquer it at some point.
It was a lot of fun, and it's a great site for golf. The way that you brought out all these elements of the local environment is one of the things that I loved about it too, because it's beautiful Sydney vegetation, which is unique in itself. Some people aren't big fans of it, but others are, and it creates a very unique environment. There's lots of shadows because a lot of towering trees around you as you climb your way around that particular site, isn't it?
It has its challenges for
young Jackson
maintaining turf grass.
Indeed. The last 3 holes of the 12-hole loop look like you had to do a few changes from what was previously there. Can you tell us a bit about that? Because 10, 11 and 12 was a crossover of sorts. You brought one of the greens back to make a par 3, and there's a shoot around. You've got, I'm calling it Neil's Tree in the middle of the 12th hole, which did nothing but make my second shot unbearable. And I did a great video on that too. Tell us a bit about what was incorporated in that triangle of the 3 finishing holes.
Yeah, well, look, in that area there were 4 holes previously, 15,
Okay.
16, 17 and 18. And 15 was one of those holes that crossed over the old 18th. And, we essentially lost that hole in the reconfiguration. And we designed a new par 3 hole, which is the 10th. And then the 11th hole is essentially a longer version of the old 17th.
Okay.
There was a very difficult short par 4, very, very hard for average golfers because of a big tree that was right at the end just beyond the tee that everyone more or less had to hit over. A very steeply sloping fairway, which would kind of have now sort of terraced into at least some levels that hopefully your ball will stay on. But we were able to remove that tree so that from the tee you can now see the hole, which is a big plus on how it was before. And we pushed the green back about 30 metres, cleared some scrubby bushes, etc., to get that green back. And we think it's a much better looking and playing golf hole now. And 12 is sort of the old 18th sort of tee shot corridor, but where the 18th went more or less straight away up to the left. This whole dog legs off to the right now. And as you said, my tree, which is a beautiful specimen of a gum.
It is.
Which I found it hard to want to take down, although us golf course architects get accused of being tree vandals in most instances. Occasionally we have a little bit of a soft spot for a tree, and we thought, well, make it a little bit interesting for golfers off this tee, and you can figure out how to get around it. It's not exactly in the middle of the fairway. It's kind of more over to the right-hand side, but still a factor.
Now, don't make my tee shot sound worse than it was, because I really thought I hit a good one. No, it was kind of funny because I stood on the tee and I was like, if I hit the big dog, I'm not confident that trying to just hit because my shot's a slight draw right to left, and I don't hit the ball left to right with much control, so that if I hit the big one and go for it, it could end up like somewhere in another postcode. So I just went with the iron, and then when I got down to the fair, I was like, oh, this is good. And then the closer I got after I crossed the creek, I'm looking at it going, that's not good for me. And the closer I got, the bigger the tree was. And I'm thinking, I don't even know if I can get over it or if I've got to try and somehow bump and run. But
I think the shot is a bit of a low pitch underneath it. There's a bit of a downslope.
Yeah.
You can kind of run your ball into the green. So, it's...
I didn't do that either.
You didn't manage that? No,
I did. I went into the bunker. So, but this is the whole thing, right? I really enjoyed the golf course. I thought it was exactly what I was hoping it was going to be, which was fun. Like there's quirk. We talked about quirk already. You got the rock wall behind the, what is it, the 7th? No, it's the 6th green, is it?
Yes,
the par 3.
They call it the wedding cake hole.
Yeah. There's a rock wall right up against the back of the green. Unreal. Yeah. There's so much interest in the 12 holes that's there, which I thought was really fascinating and enjoyable.
Yeah, I know. It's been a really enjoyable project to be involved with. Great to work with McMahon's. They've done a fantastic job under very difficult circumstances, I might add. Anyone who's been in Sydney over the last couple of years will know how much it's rained.
Yes.
And rain is not really that helpful to golf course construction projects.
Especially if you're moving a lot of stuff around on site. Like you weren't getting rid of it. It had to be transported from the build, the cut and fill.
And a lot of it, once it got wet, doesn't dry out as quickly as we kind of hoped that it might. We found that out fairly early on. So, definitely challenging, but great working with McMahon's guys.
I got to ask that question because I was talking to Bruno. He was showing me around some of the details and the works in finishing areas off and getting them right. There was some big fill spaces that needed to be moved to some parts too. And what was it like? And a little bit more, if you don't mind, working with them overall on the whole project, because the weather challenges make it hard for everyone. They got the right equipment, they got the right people with the experience. All that stuff goes a long way. And you guys have worked with them in the past as well at the Metropolitan, with
Yes,
Paul
yeah,
Mogford. So good to see some of
as
that.
a company, we've worked with them quite a bit. Look, one of the things that we wanted to do was to, I guess, capitalise on McMahon's experience, because really no one's been building golf courses in Australia for longer than those guys. And so we actually arranged for the client to pay them to be, I guess, a consultant on costing and scheduling.
Okay.
So we got them involved early in the project. So they were really invaluable, and as a result, they didn't just sort of turn up at tender time and construction time. They were well versed in, I guess, a lot of the intricacies of the project as a result of their involvement in that in those phases. And then ultimately the client did decide that they wanted to tender the job, and they, McMahon's were very competitive, and they won the tender, well deserved. And their abilities to schedule, provide their own equipment, not having to be relying on hiring machinery, etc. Yeah, that was all very very critical, especially when you're facing a lot of wet weather delays.
Yeah.
On a project like this, so it more or less took 2 years from start of construction to opening, and probably a good 6 months of that was you could put down to the Sydney weather. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we threw everything at you. I mean, I've got to be honest, it was pretty wild. It was pretty wild, but a great result at the back end of it at Chatswood. So, mate, fantastic, and well done on the design there. I want to turn the page a little bit now, mate, if you don't mind, and I know you do. We've spoken in the past, you and I, personally, with golf when it comes to golf history in Australia, golf course architecture history as well. But in particular, when it comes to Alister MacKenzie and his visit to Australia, and along with Alex Russell as well, his partner that was here, you know so much about that. You've researched a lot of this stuff through your time, and you're as far as I'm aware, you're the lead researcher of the Alister MacKenzie chronology, which is an incredible resource. Tell us a bit about some of your history work and why golf course architecture history, in your mind, is so important.
Yeah, it's another good question. You actually asked some good questions, Steve.
I hope I tried, mate. I try to. Just out here flapping my gums on a mic.
Why is it interesting to me? I'm not really sure about it, to be honest. But I think growing up here in Adelaide and being aware that MacKenzie visited and worked at Royal Adelaide has kind of always sort of been there in the back of my head, and that, I suppose, probably is the thing that got my interest in golf history to start with. But I've done quite a bit of research into other early architects, including the South Australian Kaji Reimel,
yes,
designer of Kooyonga, designer of the original Glenelg course, designer of Grange, and obviously quite involved in various courses at what was his home club originally, Royal Adelaide. So, I've had an interest in him that sort of led to other early architects who who I've been interested in, and a guy called John Lovell has certainly helped. He's had a lot of interest in early Australian golf course architects, so he's done a lot of research, which has helped me. And then I guess that sort of led on to MacKenzie and Alec Russell in particular. And some years ago now, Dr. John Green, who was the I guess the senior historian at Royal Melbourne, multiple-time club champion, knew the courses really well. He and I collaborated on a biography of Alec Russell called Discovering Alec Russell.
Got that book. Fantastic book, mate, I might add.
And that was really good because that combined a biography of the man with his golf course work as well. So it wasn't just about his golf courses, but it wasn't just about him either. So it was kind of a combination book, if you like. And I've for some reason, I'm not really sure why, I've always been interested in the history of golf course architecture and golf course architects themselves. So that's sort of led me down a particular set of rabbit warrens.
Easy to do, right? Once you get going.
You know well.
Easy to do. Why do you... I'm curious, and we'll get to some of your books as well shortly, but I'm curious as to the part... it's even more prevalent in my mind in a modern world, but why is it important to look back at that history of, and let's just narrow it down to Australian golf architecture history, but with everything that we have in a modern world, everything's now, and it's short, it's bite-sized, whatever you want to call it, the flashy terms. It's quick, it's got to be easily digested, but why is it important to hold and take stock of our own architecture history in Australia, rather than just fluffing over it?
Well, I guess it's similar to why any history of a golf club. Say, why is that important? And we find currently there's a lot of golf clubs in Australia celebrating their centenaries. We're in the 2020s, and a lot of golf clubs were formed in the 1920s. So there's a lot of we both had an involvement at Avondale, and obviously Avondale are having their centenary this year. There's an interest in the club's history, and all of these clubs tend to put out a centenary history book, and that causes someone or a group of people to look at a particular club's history. And I've always thought that not enough focus of those histories has been upon the golf course itself. You see that there might be a chapter about the course, and then there's all these other chapters on different aspects of the club's history, and that's all well and good. But I've always felt that there should be a little bit more of a focus on the golf courses and the people who made them. And in Australia, we've been lucky enough to have a whole different range of people design golf courses, most of which have come from that golf professional background, but there's a lot of others who have come from quite different backgrounds. Eric Appley is a building architect and a high quality amateur golfer. You've got other people who in more modern times have come from surveying or civil engineering. In my case, architecture, landscape architects, etc. So there's a whole range of people that have contributed to golf course design and where it is in this country. And I think if we as golf course architects are not interested in that history ourselves, well then who will be?
Yeah. Yeah, no, fair call. You've got a book that I've actually got a copy of, and I haven't taken the time to read it all yet, is The Good Doctor's Prescriptions that you've recently done. Tell us a bit about that one.
Yeah, well, look, I guess the genesis behind this particular book was probably the publisher, Graham Ryan, who published the book that I mentioned before, the Alec Russell biography. And Graham said to me, he said, I'm interested in putting out a book about Alister MacKenzie, but something that's sort of not so much quick and easy to do, but isn't quite so time-consuming as a biography, which
As your Alex Russell one.
done in the past. What do you think? And some maybe a year or so before that point, an American architect by the name of Josh Pettit had published a book called The Mackenzie Reader, which was a selected anthology, if you like, of Mackenzie's writings, but it wasn't comprehensive. It was kind of, it was a selection, a terrific book, but it wasn't, I suppose from my perspective, I thought, well, why can't I do one that is as thorough as I know and contains every particular thing that Mackenzie has written over the years in terms of articles for magazines, letters to the editor, to newspapers, etc., etc. So that's what I set myself the task to do, and I was able to put the book together relatively quickly because most of the words are not mine. I didn't have to write them.
Yeah, sure.
I had to kind of just gather them, and I'd already, in the process of my research into Mackenzie, I'd already been able to gather most of his writings, and it was really more a question of putting them together and adding a bit of commentary here and there. So that book really is as best we can without including his 1920 golf architecture book text.
Yep.
Or his 1930s Spirit of St Andrews text, which, they're standalone books, so we're not reproducing that text in this volume. You want those books, you can find them quite readily, but a lot of the articles that are included are not easy to source or to find. So, we put it together in a way that people can pick it up and read what the good doctor had to say about various subjects. And it's not just golf architecture. He had a lot to say about other subjects as well, golf in general, medicine, economics and politics. He was quite vocal on.
Yes, he had a few things to say here before he left Sydney, I believe, when he was at the Millions Club. I think from memory, before he finished his one and only time, visit to Australia at length, on the way of politics and economics and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, he was. He had a significant opposition to socialism, shall we say, and he saw that as a scourge on the world, and he was not backwards in coming forward with his views on those things. So it makes an interesting read because you see the full side of his personality come through in all of the letters and articles that he wrote. The other topic is camouflage, and that was a big part of Mackenzie's life. Obviously, in World War One, active to assist on the front lines with camouflage, but also headed up the Royal Engineers School of Camouflage in England in the last couple of years of the war, and he continued to write about that as well. And it certainly had influence on his golf design as well.
Indeed. And I'll have these books. I think you can still buy them, mate. I know you can still get the good
You
doctor's
still can,
prescriptions.
yes,
I think Alex Russell as well. Yeah. I'll have them tagged in the show notes so people can go and have a look, because that Alex Russell, and forgive me for my ignorance, but I will ask this question. Some people say Alex Russell, some people say Alec Russell, and I've got to ask someone in the know, and that's you. So what's right and what's not?
It is a very good, another good question that you've asked. And even though the spelling of the name would suggest Alex, the Scottish, I guess, ancestry of the Russell family meant that it was pronounced as Alec. And as a result, that created quite a bit of difficulty with newspaper journalists and newspaper articles over the years. And you see his name spelt as A-L-I-C-K, Alec, and Alec as in A-L-E-C. So it certainly was a difficult one. But yes, I was fortunate in the early days of my research to be able to interview his son Philip on a couple of occasions.
Wow.
And certainly he set me straight on how his name should be said.
Alec. I'll remember that. Oh, there you go. I've got it now. I've never understood it. I had a little chuckle there when you're talking about researching names and misspelling in newspaper. How funny is it seeing the different and incorrect spelling? Like even when you're looking up Alister MacKenzie, and I've done a stack of stuff online looking at Mackenzie's name and how many ways it's written incorrectly. And you're like, no wonder I can't find that article about him.
Well, I've learned over the years that you've got to research all sorts of different versions of his name. And the one that I hit upon not that long ago was, I really should search Mr. MacKenzie, MR.
Yep.
Instead of doctor.
Yep.
And I'm kicking myself that I didn't find this article before, because Mr. MacKenzie was, I guess, an old sort of English or British terminology for a surgeon. So surgeons were often called misters rather than doctor.
Okay.
And this particular article was a very early interview with MacKenzie from 1911 in the Leeds newspaper, and it was his first interview as a golf course architect. So he was practicing it as a hobby, essentially, on weekends.
Right.
He was still working as a doctor, but they called him a surgeon, and in particular, hence the name Mr. MacKenzie. So I hadn't been able to find this article ever before.
There you go.
But with a new search term, I found it, and it also had a 1911 photograph of him, which
wow.
Really, while not the earliest, is certainly one of the earliest photos of him. So, search terms make a difference.
The one that got me early on when I was looking at a lot of Alister MacKenzie's stuff through Australia was the misspelling of the beginning of his surname. It was often written equally, I found, M-C-K instead of M-A-C-K. And that simple omission of that one letter can... If you type it in with just the MCK, it opens up all these other ones that I didn't find before.
No, and there's also another version where they even abbreviate the C to an apostrophe, so you actually get M apostrophe K N-Z-I-E. So they're it's very confusing.
It is. It's hard work. And that chronology, the Alister MacKenzie chronology, is an enormous document, right? How hard is that? That's an ongoing thing, right? You're finding info all the time?
Thing, and I'm sort of just getting ready now to put out the next the next edition of it, and I've added over 150 new entries to it. Last issue, which was about 2.5 years ago, I think, I'd added about another 150 over the previous. And it's just a matter of diligence, I suppose. And
Sure.
as a result of kind of researching my new book, which is hopefully we can talk about in a moment. That sort of meant that I've found more entries for the chronology and where he was on particular days. So we're not quite at the level of knowing what he had for breakfast, but we're not far
We're
away from that.
Working on it. Well, that does lead in nicely to this next bit about these new series of books that you're doing. It's 5 volumes that I believe you're doing on Alister MacKenzie as part of, you want to get it out in time for his centenary of Mackenzie's trip to Australia, I believe. Tell us what that's all about and what's gone into it.
Well, this is really, I guess, the summary of all of my Mackenzie research over the last 25 years or thereabouts, because I've always had in mind that I wanted to create an updated list of Mackenzie's courses, because at the moment there are 3, I guess, different lists of his courses. One in the Cornish and Whitten Architects of Golf book, one in Brett Hawtrey's Colton Company book, and finally there's one in the Doak Scott and Haddock biography of Mackenzie. So there's 3 different lists. They've all got different ones that are listed in some and not in others. So there isn't sort of a common list of the accepted courses of Dr. Mackenzie. So I wanted to do that, but to do more than just a list. I wanted to be able to write an entry for each of those courses that people could understand how he got involved in a project, what he did in that project, and when.
Okay.
So essentially there's, all of the courses that Mackenzie was involved with, either, because as a golf course architect, there are courses that you design a course for and nothing happens.
Yep.
Project dies. Okay. And there's quite a few like that for Dr. Mackenzie. There's projects where you put a submission into a client and for whatever reason they pick someone else.
Yep.
Mackenzie has those. There are courses, obviously, where he is involved in redesigning the course, but, for whatever reason, he isn't involved in the construction or he does supervise it. And then there's new courses. So there's a whole range of these different projects. So it's not simply what, the finished article. It's all about in some cases, the struggle to win a project or not win it.
Okay.
So I'm recognising all of those. So the books are in 5 volumes simply because there are so many courses, so much information that I've got about them that I didn't want to kind of dumb it down and edit the information that I've got down into a small size so that I could fit every one of these courses in one book.
Sure.
I just felt that wasn't doing justice to the man and the subject. So the 5 volumes are the first 2 volumes are England, broken up alphabetically, A to M and then N to Z in the second volume. Volume 3 is the rest of the British Isles, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Ireland, as well as a little bit on possible courses that he may have been involved in Europe. The 4th volume is Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and South America. And then the final volume, which is the biggest one, is the United States of America.
Wow.
And yeah, it's, most of the books are sort of in the probably 280, 300 page range, but the American one is a bit bigger. Look here and see how big it is of the draft. 350 pages, roughly.
Wow, there you go. Far out.
So they're going to be available in a set.
Okay.
Or both hardcover, well, they'll be leather bound, one version, soft bound, another version, but you can also be able to buy the soft bound books, both volumes. So if you were, say, you were only interested in the Australian courses, or you could buy volume 4.
Wow,
or if you were only interested in American courses, you could buy volume 5.
Sensational. Well, mate, when that, have we got any ideas when? Are you going to give us that, or we're just keeping that up our sleeve for the moment?
No, well, look, the book launches are going to be in October, just ahead of Mackenzie's centenary of his visit, because a number of the clubs his clubs are planning some activities and celebrations of that time, which is great. That they recognise the importance, because if you speak to someone like Mike Clayton, he says Australian golf can be divided into pre-Mackenzie and post-Mackenzie, and the world can be divided into the countries that Mackenzie visited and didn't visit.
Yeah, that's very true indeed, isn't it?
So yes, it's October will be the launch of the books, and that's not that far away now that we're in.
I was going to say
getting towards the middle of August. So yeah,
that's
it's
ridiculous.
coming along.
My birthday's in October. Maybe I'll buy myself a present. There you go. I'll keep. But I'll share those when it comes out. Maybe I'll be able to share that with people. So make sure you let me know the details and where.
Yeah, no, that would be much appreciated, because obviously we're looking for sales, but it's not going to be a cheap investment, buying 5 books at once. And,
no, of course.
One of the things that we discussed with Graham Ryan, who's the publisher, was to whether we put out one book at a time. And I said, well, I'd rather put out all of them together, because, then people go, well, I can see all of them and I can pay for all of them. Rather than go, well, what if he only puts out one volume? What happens then?
Drip free one at a time. But anyone who's into this sort of stuff will want the set. I've got no doubt, because it's an incredible resource.
So. I mean, I'm a little bit biased, knowing what each volume contains, but there's some pretty exciting things. One, I guess, special news flash that I might just share with you
please.
Is that Augusta National have very kindly opened their archives and allowed me to share a Christmas card that Dr. Mackenzie and his wife Hilda sent to Bobby Jones in 1933.
What?
And it's illustrated by Hilda, who was a very talented artist, with a watercolour painting showing the Mackenzie house at Pasatiempo with a big oak tree in front of it, flowering bushes in the garden, and Dr. Mackenzie in the distance having a swing.
Wow, that's incredible.
And the greeting is written by Mackenzie himself. So
my goodness,
it's quite a little coup, I think.
That's incredible
for them to agree to that.
What an amazing addition to be able to include. That's staggering. I mean, I've never heard of anything like that before.
Well, I just love the opportunity one day to just actually wander around and look in the archives at Augusta National to see what else they have. There's some quite amazing things in there relating to Mackenzie, but they very kindly allowed me to
That's amazing.
Share this, which
far out.
It's quite a nice addition to the book, let's say.
Absolutely. And there was that one, we shared something. I was doing work with Kalara a couple of years ago, and we found something in Mackenzie's visit to Kalara, a little document.
Yes, you did.
They'd had.
It was like an annual report.
Yeah.
which again confirmed MacKenzie visiting Killara. Unfortunately, they had a clubhouse fire, I think, which
lost everything.
Lost, pretty much most of those documents, as did the Australian Golf Club. They had a clubhouse fire and lost any reports, maps, etc. that MacKenzie had. And so the other thing that I've tried to do in this book is to assemble all of the known MacKenzie plans of golf courses around the world and green plans as well. So it's sort of
that sounds very much more extensive. Yeah,
thorough as I can make it.
I love staring at plans. Is that a weird thing? I love staring at plans of greens and golf courses.
It probably is weird. I mean, as golf course architects, we do it all day. But
thanks for affirming that, Neil. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. It definitely is a little bit weird. But,
it's a bit weird, Steve, if you're out on your own with that.
But they are kind of, these early plans can be, quite attractive artworks.
They are. I think they're captivating. There's one that I found working recently with Avondale. I get off sidetrack away from MacKenzie, but you and I have been working with Avondale Golf Club, and I found Prosper Ellis's original hand-drawn. He's got a stylised plan of the golf course along with his architectural plans of different routings. And I was there just like I'm looking at something that's the best part of nearly 80 years old. Yes. Hand-drawn. Yeah. It's incredible.
Yeah, well, look, it's interesting, and, I think it's also about who looks, because a lot of these archive items kind of get buried, and while they're in the items, while they're in the archives, thankfully, they're not really recognised for what they are, and, I've been fortunate to chat to a couple of people who are doing a review of one well-known club's archives, and have found all sorts of things that they didn't know exist in the archive. So yeah, it's
incredible.
It is incredible, and unfortunately, a lot of it has been lost over the years. If you look at MacKenzie's visit to Australia and sort of the 16 plus clubs that he advised, there's actually only 2 courses have got his like coloured presentation plans.
Really?
All Melbourne have got a black and white sketch plan, but it's quite incredible.
There you go, Neil. Well, look, mate, I think that's a great way to wrap it up. We'll have lots of stuff here in the show notes, along with information when those books are released later on this year. We'll be able to share that with people. Neil Crafter from Crafter Mogford, mate, I appreciate your time in having a chat with me on the Design Brief. This has been a wonderful segment, sharing with everyone your background, how you got into it, where you're working, some of the work you've done and completed, and I've got to mention, of course, working with Partners McMahons that I've got on the podcast here. Mate, you've got some great insight and a wonderful amount of knowledge when it comes to the history of architecture in our country, not to mention the work that you do around the country in different golf courses, particularly in Adelaide, South Australia. We've got to mention that's your home. Mate, I appreciate you greatly taking the time to chat with me and share all this wonderful information with the audience listening, mate. It's fantastic to have you part of the podcast.
Look, thank you, Steve, and keep up the good work with your podcasts, and thanks to McMahon's for sponsoring you to do these chats. It's much appreciated.
Wonderful. Thanks for being on, mate.
Cheers.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. A big thank you to Neil Crafter for joining me on the podcast, taking the time to share a lot of that information and a lot of his journey and what he's doing for a living as a member of the Society of Australian Golf Course Architects. So I hope you enjoyed that one. Lots to take in, and Neil was just an absolutely fantastic guest to have on the podcast and share a lot of that insight with you as well. So a big thank you to Neil. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please check out the show notes. There is a stack of clickables in the show notes and some of those books that Neil mentioned as well. So if you're interested in those sorts of things, go through the show notes. I've done all the homework for you, and lots of the things that were mentioned in there. There's also a couple of past podcast episodes from the Golfing Greenkeeper podcast that you might be interested in clicking on as well. If you haven't listened to them, I've got them linked there in the show notes for you. Now, I do want to clarify, ladies and gentlemen, you heard Neil and I talk about it, and I made mention that Chatswood, New Greens Chatswood in Sydney, the new golf course redesign that Neil did, is Australia's first specific purpose-built 12-hole golf course in that space. I do know of 2 other 12-hole golf courses that in Australia, but they have changed over their time, and I think they try to play more holes to make it 18 as well. So one of them is Tathra Beach Country Club down the south coast of New South Wales. It's got 12 holes on its site, but they advertise as an 18-hole golf course. So I don't know if they've got a couple of other greens and they shuffle the way that you play the extra holes, if that makes sense, to get to your 18. And the other one is Huon Valley Golf Club down in Tasmania. They have 12 holes. They started out as 9, and through their history, they've added a couple of extra holes. First off was 2, then another one to get to 12. Will they continue to add holes to their site over time? I don't know, but as it stands, they are 12 holes as well. The difference being, I suppose, is that Chatswood, with its new life and its rebirth, if you like, this has been like a 12-hole concept with no concept to add any other holes. There's nowhere to go, so they're not looking to add holes. It's 12 holes, and it's specifically designed to be a 12-hole golf course. So I suppose that's a little PS at the end of this podcast episode that I wanted to add in, because I did actually have a listener let me know about Tathra, and I've since learned also myself about Huon Valley. So I just thought I'd mention that as a little postscript for this segment. Please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast if you want to stay up to date with what's going on. Great segments that are continuing to come out. We've got a lot more conversations, a lot more interviews, and so much more content coming your way. So please make sure you stick with us and subscribe to the podcast. Any reviews, any feedback, if you want to send me an email, let me know with any comments or messages on social media as well. I'm interested in all those things, so please don't be shy. Let me know what your thoughts are. I have to say thank you, of course, to Bruno Kay for jumping on the pod to help me introduce this interview with Neil Crafter. It's wonderful to have McMahon's as a partner of the podcast, and indeed on this specifically, the design brief, to help me bring you these conversations and interviews. And ladies and gentlemen, please make sure you check out McMahon's at their website, mcmahons.net.au. That's MCMAHONS.net. McMahon's delivering precision-built golf courses, sports fields and thoroughbred racetracks since 1993. You heard Neil mention in there that they've been in this game for an incredibly long time, and it also goes to show you with some of their work that Bruno and I talk about at the start of these segments of McMahon's The Design Brief. I like to give you an update of just where they're working and what they're doing and helping to build better golf courses right around Australia. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for taking the time to listen. Until next time, you hit 'em clean, we'll keep 'em green, and I'll catch up with you very soon.